How is everybody doing today? Today I'm trying to keep a very, very brief lesson. It's just going to be dealing with the review with the vocabulary words that we've done in the last two lessons. So amplitude, midline, frequency, and period. Hey, what's going on, Tabitha? So those are the only ones that I'm going to be working with today, and then I'm just going to go about graphing them with you guys. Hey, Shannon. So I got three questions. Hey, Ella. So these three questions are pretty much identical to each other. It's just graphing each one individually, making sure that you guys feel comfortable with them. And then as far as homework goes, I got nothing for you guys today. What I will most likely do is tomorrow I'll do another tiny lesson that's going to have like two questions like this, and then I'll attach the homeworks in the notability lesson that I'll send you guys out tomorrow. So it'll be just like today. I'll send you guys out an email. There will probably be like 4 or 5 questions on there, and I'll explain it all in the email for you. Okay? So I just want to make sure you guys feel comfortable with the graphing. I'm just taking lessons 7 and 8 and putting them together. Okay? Oh, sweet. So I didn't even know you got the job, dude. Congrats. So if you didn't catch 7 or 8, that's what I'm going over today. So I'll start right off with the beginning. I'm going to answer the 4 vocabulary words that are there. I'll highlight and I'll make sure to color code so I can spot it all for you guys and you feel comfortable. Okay? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight amplitude. And the amplitude can always be found at the beginning of the function. So in this case, our amplitude is just going to be 3. In my opinion, amplitude and midline are the two easiest to find when you're working with trig functions. So we did the amplitude. Next one is midline. And in this case, the midline can be found at the end of the function. It's whatever you're adding or subtracting on. So this is going to be at -3. Frequency is always represented by the b value. It's always the value that's being multiplied by the x or the theta. So this one, if we're looking at it, is the number that's in front of the theta right there. And right now there is no number in front of the theta, and we were taught if there is no number written in front of a variable, it's just represented by 1. So in this case, the frequency is just 1. That means that it's only creating one s value or one c value, one sine or one cosine. And the last part technically is something that you guys are supposed to have memorized, and I'm only saying that because you don't have to have it memorized for this year, is the period formula. And the period formula we went over in the last lesson is represented by p equals 2 pi over b. And I just want to point out frequency, again, that is simply the b value. So all I'm going to do is just take the number for frequency, plug it in, and then I'll have my period. So in this case, we have p is equal to 2 pi over 1, which is really just 2 pi. Okay? So finding the values is one thing. When it comes to a Regents exam, that is a pretty popular question. It would be multiple choice, and they would say, okay, identify which of the following are correct. And we just found all 4 numbers. You would check the multiple choice until you find the one that has those 4 correct answers. That would be a part 1 question. There's also a part 2 question, and the part 2 question would be to graph it afterwards. So that's what I'm going to do with you guys next. Now, I'm going to try to avoid the calculator today. If you guys need the calculator to type it in, you are more than welcome to do so. but I want to try to practice for next year. Because if you take pre-calculus or you take Math 12 with me, we're going to be doing a lot without the calculator. Okay? So, that being said, first thing I'm going to do is I want to graph my midline. Now, the midline isn't really part of the graph. It's like an invisible line that's located in the middle of the function. And it's at -3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw in a dotted line that is going through -3. And I know it's not a perfectly straight line, but it is what it is. Okay, it's going to bother me. I got to make it a straight line. You guys, if you guys know who I am, you know that I have to make sure that I do everything correct. All right, there we go. Straight line, but I need it to be dashed, so I'm just going to go into my eraser, partial. Oh, why is the eraser so tiny? All right, now I got a dash line that's actually straight, so you guys can't yell at me. Okay, so now that I have the midline, what I have to do is find the amplitude. So first thing we do is graph the midline. Second thing we graph the amplitude. Amplitude is how high above and how far below you go from that midline. So because the amplitude is 3, I'm just going to go from this green line and count up 3. And I'm also going to count down 3. And just like I did in the last one, I'm going to draw a straight line. I didn't say it couldn't be crooked, Ella. I just said it needed to be straight. I don't need to hear your nonsense. So I got that dash line. I got this dash line. Oh my gosh. Ella got in my head, and now I'm going to fix this whole thing because Ella gets what she wants. I'll draw another line the best that I can. It's still going to probably be crooked, but I don't care. There we go. Whatever. So now that we have that, we need to be able to graph it. Now graphing it, I don't want to hear it. Everybody go home. I can't even say that because you're all home. It's not even fair. All right, what color can I use? I'm trying to use a color that we haven't done. Probably like a purple because we've done pink. All right, so the sine function. Sine starts on the midline. So when I go to graph this, this part is always going to be very similar as long as you understand sine and you understand cosine. So sine starts on the midline. So I'm going to come down to the green midline and I'm going to put in my purple dot. Because the sine is positive, it means it has to go up first. So I'm going to go to the next tally. We don't know what this tally is yet, but we know that it's going to hit right at that red line and tally on the x-axis. And when we do sine and cosine curves, they always alternate. Remember, they always go up and then back down, or down and then back up. So I went up. I know I can't go any higher than that purple line, so I have to go down to the next tick mark on the x-axis, and I'm going to be back at the midline. The next mark is going to be all the way down at the minimum, and then it's going to work its way back up to the midline. So I have a curve. I'm just drawing it in. And that kind of looks like an S, so we know that we have our sine curve, so we know we're okay. The only issue is New York State would not give you full credit on this problem unless you label the x-axis. So as of right now, we don't know what all those labels are going to be unless we know what the period is. And we do know what the period is because we already figured that out. We said that period is going to be 2 pi. So I know that this last mark where it's ending is at 2 pi. 2 pi is the same thing as 360 degrees. So if we were to graph this function, that is known as one cycle. That means it was one rotation around the circle. If that is one circle, if it is one rotation, then the numbers on the x-axis stay exactly the same every single time. So I'm going to show a little trick on how to always remember what those numbers are, because I don't want you guys memorizing stuff. So what I'm going to show you guys is the first one is negative 2 pi. The second one, I'm going to write it out, and actually, I should write it like this. I'm going to erase this just for a second. The answer is negative 2 pi, but I'm going to show you guys a different way to help you remember. This one is going to be negative 4 pi over 2. The next one is negative 3 pi over 2. The next one is negative 2 pi over 2. I know it's not writing right now. I'm waiting for the iPad to catch up because it's just lagging on me right now. There it goes. And then the last one is negative pi over 2. I'm hoping that you guys see a pattern that is just formed with what I wrote. On the other side, it would be the same thing, but they're positive. So this would be pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, and technically 2 pi is the same thing as saying 4 pi over 2. Normally when we graph, we just make sure we reduce all those fractions, which we could do. I'm hoping you guys are recognizing that negative 4 pi over 2 over here is really just negative 2 pi. Negative 3 pi over 2 cannot be reduced. The 2's can be reduced and we would be left with negative pi. So this is a basic sine function. Okay, so you could write those fractions in reduced form, but the reason why I was showing that, just so you guys can see the pattern. It's just counting up by ones on the top. We're counting down by ones. So I'm going to do the same process with number 2. Everything's almost going to be identical except for when we go to the frequency and period. So I'm going to scroll down to number 2. I'm going to do all the same stuff. I got amplitude. So in this case, amplitude is the beginning number, which in this case is just a negative. And remember, if there's no number there, that means it's really going to be 1. The next thing I'm going to look for is my midline. And the midline says that it's positive 3. The next thing is going to be the frequency. The frequency is that 2, because it's the number on the inside, or it's the B value. And now if I want to find the period, we're just using the formula. P equals 2 pi over B, which in this case is that frequency. So we're really going to have 2 pi over 2, which is really just going to be pi. So everything we're going to do is almost identical to question number 1, except this time it's telling us that our full circle is not at 2 pi this time. This time the period is ending at pi. So this time our graph is going to go from negative pi to positive pi. So in order to properly graph this for full credit, we would have to figure out all the other missing values on the x-axis. So I'm going to show you guys what we did last time. It's just another quick little review from lesson 8. So if you haven't done lesson 8 homework, this will help you out for the very last problem. So in order to find the missing ones, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write down the 4 negative ones that were originally on our graph above. And we're just going to have to do a conversion with it. So the first one was at negative 2 pi. That's what you normally start at. And then you have negative 3 pi over 2. Negative pi over 2. Oh, I'm skipping over pi. Negative pi, and then negative pi over 2. That is for an original circle. That is for a full 360 degrees. Well, we're saying that the spin this time is pi, or pi is really 180 degrees. So in order to figure out what the new rotation is going to be, what we did in the class for lesson 8 is we had to look at this b value, and we did something with it. So I'm going to draw a little arrow down here. That frequency tells you the number of times it occurs if you're looking at 360 degrees. So because that 2 falls on the inside of the parentheses, we said when we go to do our algebra, we're really doing the opposite of what's being shown. So that says 2 times theta. However, when you guys actually really multiply it out algebraically, it's going to be the reciprocal. So what we're going to do is we're technically going to multiply all of those original numbers by 1/2. And that will tell us the new numbers on the x-axis. So if I go to do the first one, negative 2 pi times 1/2 is really just going to be, the if you were to multiply it out, the 2's would cancel, and you're really just going to have negative pi, which is what we already said we were starting with. We said we were starting with negative pi, so that's okay. The next one, if you guys go to multiply it out, you'll have negative 3 pi over 4. The next one is going to just be negative pi over 2. And the last one is going to be negative pi over 4. So these are the new values that are popping up on our x-axis. When you guys get to the positive side, it's all exactly the same, except you're just going in the positive order. So now I'm going to say pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4. Now that we have our new x's, all we have to do is draw in the midline and amplitude and graph the cosine curve just like we did before. So this time we said the midline is at positive 3. So I'm going to go up to positive 3. I don't want anybody judging me on how beautiful my line is. I also have to do the amplitude. So we said the midline was at 3. The amplitude says negative 1. We ignore the sign when we do amplitude because amplitude just tells you how high you go and how low you go from the midline. So in this case, since it was negative 1, it's just telling us we're going to go up 1. And we're also going to go down 1. So we know our answers have to be between those two blue lines. You guys always constantly judge me. So we know it's got to be between those two blue lines, and we know the green line is the middle. Now this time it's a cosine curve. So if we're doing a cosine curve does not start at the midline. It starts at the sign that you begin with. So start with the sign. Now, it doesn't mean that we're starting down on the negatives on our graph. What it's saying is you're going to start at the negative amplitude. So if you look at your two amplitudes, the highest number was at positive, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is at positive 4. Our lowest amplitude was at positive 2. So this is at 2, this is at 4. They're telling you to start at the negative 1, which would be down here at 2. So I'm going to draw in my little dot down here at 2. Well, we can't go down from that purple dot because we have to stay in between the blue lines. So I have to go up. So the next mark is going to be at pi over 4. And I know it's got to be at the midline because remember, we're always alternating as we go through. after I go to pi over 4, the next is pi over 2, and it looks like we're going to be all the way up at the top of the blue line. And then we have to work our way back down. So the next one will be at 3 pi over 2, all the way back down, to positive 2. So if we did it correctly, it should kind of, sort of look like a C. A very crooked C. And then just remember, whatever you do to the positive side, you have to do the same thing on the opposite side. So on the negative side, I'm going to do the same thing. I got to work my way up. So I know that I'm going to be going up to... Oh, did my pen stop again? Let's see how accurate all my dots are going to be. Oh, that was off. That would be here. Oh, man, come on. All right, so it's up to here, and then it's going to work its way back down to there. So obviously, if I give this to you guys, I'll make sure that I include an actual graph so it is a little bit straighter and it's not as crooked because we're free drawing. But right now, this is just notes. Okay? So when I give you some problems tomorrow, I'll find some that I'll actually put into Notability and send out to you guys. All right. We got one more. Same type of question. We're going to work our way through. Hopefully you guys are feeling kind of okay with this. Going down to 3. Okay, so number 3 is identical. I'm going to go a little bit faster this time. So, amplitude, 3. Midline, 2. Frequency, I don't want to use that color. The colors, it mismatches. I'll use red. Frequency is going to be at pi over 4. And then when we go to do the period, it's going to be 2 pi over b, which in this case is 2 pi all over pi over 4. So the only difference on this one is when you guys go to find the period, you'll notice that you have a fraction on the bottom. So in the notes, I said to make life a little bit easier for you, take that 2 pi on the top and put it over 1. Because now you guys could just multiply it by the LCD, or you're really just doing keep, change, flip. So my LCD in this case is really just 4. So I can multiply top and bottom by 4. And you guys will notice that you'll have 8 pi on the top, because 2 pi times 4. And on the bottom, the 4s are going to cancel out. And really, 8 pi over pi is 8. So that we did in lesson 8. Well, some of you guys did. I know a lot of you guys haven't turned in homework number 8 yet. Once you guys get to it, you'll see that there are some questions like that on there. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to find the new numbers on the x-axis, and then I'm going to draw in my amplitude and midline. So I'm going to do just like I did in the last one. The original 4 numbers on a grid are from negative 2 pi all the way to positive 2 pi. But this one is telling us that we're going to end at 8. So if we're ending at 8, that means we started at negative 8. So everything has to be between negative 8 and positive 8. So I'm going to take the original 4, which is negative 2 pi, negative 3 pi over 2, negative pi, and negative pi over 2. So our goal is to find the new numbers using the frequency that was given. You just have to remember the rule. If you're multiplying inside the parentheses, you're really doing the reciprocal. So I'm really going to be multiplying all 4 of these by pi over 4. Oh my gosh. What am I doing? By its reciprocal. I even said reciprocal, and then I wrote the same thing. 4 over pi. There we go. Sorry. And now I'm just multiplying all of those out. Yeah, 4 over pi. Thanks, Sierra. My bad. What you guys can notice is, hey, you have pi's on all the top and pi's on all the bottoms. So when you guys go to multiply this out, all of the pi's are going to cancel out. So we just have to multiply what's left over. The first one is going to be at -8. And again, we can check it. We knew that it was -8 because we already wrote that down up top because the period was going from -8 to +8. So now we got to go to do the next one. Come on, iPad. I'll have -12 over 2. But if you guys cross-reduced, you guys should notice that's really going to be at -6. The next one is going to be -1 times 4, which is just -4. And then the last one is going to be -4 over 2, which again is just going to reduce down to be -2. So in this case, we went from -8. It looks like we're counting by 2's. -2, and then it's going to go back up to +8. So now that we have all of that done, we got our new numbers in, we just have to go back and draw in the amplitude and midline and graph the function. Okay. So midline we said was at +2. We said that the amplitude is 3, so that means we have to go up 3 and we have to go down 3. So 1, 2, 3. It looks like we're up here at 5. And then we have to go down 3. 1, 2, 3. It looks like we're at -1. So we know that the graph has to be between -1 and 5. Okay, so that's our range from the smallest number all the way to the largest number, -1 to 5. Because this is the sine function always starts on the midline. So I'm going to start right on the middle. Because it is +3, that means the graph is going to go up first. So I have to go all the way up to +3. So I'm going to be at 2, 3. And then I'm going to work my way down. So I'm going to go back to the midline. And then I'm going to go to the bottom of the range. And then work my way back up the midline. If we did it correctly, it should kind of sort of look like an S. And then you guys just have to do the same thing to the other side. So instead of going up on the other side, since we're going to the negative side, we're really going to be going down and working our way back up. If you guys watched me play Spider-Man over the weekend, you would have seen that I was doing these trig functions in the video game. It was a real teachable moment, and I think there was only like 2 people there. But that's all I got for you guys today. There are no homework assignments as of right now. So tomorrow I'll make something up that has a couple more practice problems like this. I'll actually include a grid on it so it's not all messy looking. And I'm just going to have you guys practice creating graphs. I'm not even sure if we will even have a lesson tomorrow. I'll leave it at that. If I get enough backlash where I get enough emails saying, yes, I want some more practice with this, I can do a couple more practice problems with you guys. If you're feeling pretty comfortable with it, I'll send out the mini lesson / homework through email again, and I'll just create a Showbie for you guys to turn it in. But if you're feeling pretty good graphing this, I don't really think you guys are going to need another lesson. But I'm ending it there. I hope you guys have an awesome evening. I got a phone call that's coming in. Yes, Zoom will still be on. If you got any other questions, shoot me an email. I got to answer it. Bye. Love you all.